"You can have a wedding anytime, Addie." That's what my sister told me, 6 weeks before I walked down the aisle, in front of 42 chairs, with only 7 people sitting in them. She said it like my wedding was a dentist appointment, something I could just reschedule, so it wouldn't interfere with her baby shower. And the worst part, it wasn't just her. One by one, my entire family chose her over me. My mother, my aunts, my cousins, even my father, the man who promised he would walk me down the aisle, chose finger sandwiches and champagne over his own daughter's wedding. So I got married without him, without any of them. Just 7 people and a stranger who stepped in when my own family didn't. But here's what they didn't know. While they were posting photos, laughing at a country club, calling it family, my husband and I were already sitting on something that would change everything. Something so big that 2 weeks later, my phone exploded with 417 messages from the same people who couldn't even send one on my wedding day. Now let me ask you something. If the people who ignored you suddenly came back the moment you succeeded, would you answer them? Or would you finally let them feel what silence sounds like? And if you've ever been the one sitting in a room full of empty chairs, wondering why you were never enough, then stay with me, because what happened next is something my family never saw coming. And if stories like this speak to you, take a moment to subscribe. Not for me, but so you don't miss the next story that might find you exactly when you need it. My name is Adeline. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of the day my family chose my sister over me, and how they spent the rest of their lives realizing what that decision really cost them. If you had met my family from the outside, you would have thought we were perfect. The kind of family people admire from a distance. A white colonial house in Connecticut, black shutters, hydrangeas blooming along the walkway. My mother hosted book clubs on Thursdays. My father wore the same 3 ties and called it discipline. And my sister was the center of everything. Her name is Colette, and in our family, there was one unspoken rule. Everything revolved around her. Not because she was kinder, not because she was smarter, but because she married well. 5 years ago, Colette married a man named Brett Whitfield. At the time, he was everything my parents respected: money, status, connections. He bought her a luxury SUV, gifted her a Cartier bracelet, and more importantly, he bought my parents' loyalty. He paid their mortgage, covered their expenses, funded renovations to the house they couldn't afford to maintain. And in return, my family treated Colette like she had achieved something extraordinary, like she had earned her place, instead of simply marrying into it. And me, I was the younger daughter, the quiet one, the one who didn't bring money into the room. So I was easy to ignore. I worked as an illustrator, children's books, editorial pieces, small commissions that came and went. Some months were good, some months weren't. I lived in a rented studio in New Haven, paint on the counters, a secondhand couch, windows that let in more cold air than they should. But it was honest, and that mattered to me, even if it didn't matter to them. I met my husband Marcus 3 years ago at an art fair. He was standing in front of his own painting, frowning at it, like it had personally offended him. I laughed. He turned. And something about him, something quiet, focused, steady, made me stop. Marcus is a painter, not the kind my family respects, not the kind that comes with a salary or a business card, the kind that takes time, the kind that builds slowly, piece by piece, with no guarantee anyone will notice. But I noticed, and that was enough for me. We didn't have much. Some nights we ate pasta 3 days in a row. Some months we counted every dollar. But we were building something real. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. My family didn't see it that way. To them, Marcus wasn't stable. He wasn't reliable. And worst of all, he wasn't impressive. I remember the first time I brought him home for Thanksgiving. The table was set perfectly. Crystal glasses, polished silverware. Wine my sister made sure everyone knew cost $200 a bottle. I brought a pie, homemade. No one mentioned it. Halfway through dinner, my father leaned forward. He smiled. The kind of smile that pretends to be polite, but isn't. "So Marcus," he said, "when are you going to get a real job?" There it was. Not subtle, not kind, just honest, in the worst possible way. My sister laughed softly. My brother-in-law smirked. And I sat there, feeling that familiar sensation, like I was slowly disappearing, right in front of everyone. Marcus didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just reached under the table and took my hand, squeezed it gently, like he was reminding me we were okay. What nobody at that table knew, not my father, not my sister, not even me, was that Marcus had just finished a painting for a client we didn't fully understand yet. Someone important, someone who had been watching him, quietly, for months. And upstairs, in that same house, my family was busy deciding that he wasn't worth anything. Looking back now, that was the moment everything started to change. Not loudly, not all at once, but slowly, like a door opening just enough to let the truth in. And the truth was this: the people who were so sure we would never become anything were about to be very, very wrong. When Marcus proposed, it wasn't dramatic. There was no restaurant, no audience, no diamond ring waiting under a glass of champagne. Just the two of us, lying on the floor of our studio, surrounded by unfinished paintings, snow falling quietly outside the window. He asked softly, and somehow that made it feel more real than anything I had ever seen. We chose June 14th, a small garden venue near Mystic. Nothing extravagant, 42 chairs, wildflowers, an arch Marcus was building himself from reclaimed wood. It wasn't the kind of wedding my family would brag about, but it was ours. And for once, I thought maybe that would be enough. I called my parents that weekend. My father's first response wasn't congratulations. It wasn't "I'm happy for you." It was June 14th. Let me check. Let me check. Like my wedding was a scheduling conflict. Like it needed approval. 2 days later, he called back. "I'll be there," he said. "I'll walk you down the aisle." I held on to those words, like they meant something. My mother asked how much it was costing. Not if I was happy, not what my dress looked like, just the price. And my sister, she sent a text. "Congrats. Let me know if you need anything." That was it. No phone call, no excitement, no opinions. And that's when I should have known something was wrong. Because Colette always had opinions about everything, except this. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from my aunt. The kind of call that changes everything before you even understand why. "Honey," she said, "are you going to Colette's shower too? Or just the wedding?" I remember standing there, paint dripping from the brush in my hand, trying to process what she just said. "What shower?" A pause. Then, the baby shower. June 14th, at the country club. Same day, same time, an hour and a half away. Impossible to attend both. And suddenly, everything made sense. The silence, the lack of interest, the absence of questions. She already knew. I called Colette immediately. She answered on the third ring. Her voice, bright, rehearsed, effortless. "Oh my God, Addie. I didn't realize the venue only had that date available. Didn't realize. As if dates just appear, without intention. As if it wasn't deliberate," I said quietly. She laughed, soft and dismissive. "You can have a wedding anytime," she said. "This is my first baby." There it was, the same sentence. That would replay in my mind. For weeks, I hung up. And for the first time, I felt something shift. Not heartbreak. Not yet. Just clarity. I called my mother. She already knew. Of course she did. "I know, honey," she said. "But Colette really needs the family there." Needs. Like I didn't. "Can't you postpone?" she asked. Like it was that simple. Like deposits didn't exist. Like invitations hadn't been sent. Like this day didn't matter. I called my father next. He avoided the question, said he'd figure it out. He didn't. 3 days passed. No answer. No confirmation. Just silence. And then, my best friend Rachel showed me something I don't think I was ever meant to see. Screenshots from the family group chat. Messages Colette had sent, one by one, to every single person. Not casually. Not accidentally. Carefully. Strategically. To my mother, "If you go to Addie's wedding, I'll feel like you don't care about your first grandchild." To my aunt, "It would be embarrassing if our side of the family doesn't show up." And to my father, the one message I wish I could forget, "Addie will understand. She's used to being disappointed." I read that line over and over again until the words stopped making sense. Used to being disappointed. Like it was a personality trait. Like it was something I had accepted. Like it was something they had trained me to be. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a conflict. It wasn't bad timing. It wasn't unfortunate. It was a decision. They weren't choosing between two events. They were choosing between two daughters. And for the first time in my life, they weren't even pretending it was a difficult choice. By the end of that week, 22 family members had declined my wedding. 22, all going to Greenwich, all choosing her. I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I didn't call anyone twice. Because something inside me finally understood. If you have to convince someone to show up for you, they were never really there to begin with. So I sent one final message to everyone. Simple, clear, no emotion, just the details, the date, the time, the address, and one last line. "I hope to see you there." I pressed send and waited. Minutes passed, then hours, then the entire night. Not a single reply, not one. And in that silence, I got my answer. Not just about the wedding, but about everything. And the strangest part, for the first time, it didn't break me. It set me free. The morning of June 14th started quietly, too quietly. Rachel was in the bathroom, standing behind me, steady hands, careful movements, applying my makeup like she was preparing me for something sacred. Neither of us said much, because there wasn't much left to say. My dress hung behind us. Simple ivory lace, something I found in a small shop, and somehow it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for me. My bouquet sat on the kitchen table, white peonies, soft lavender, fresh, delicate, real. Unlike everything else, my phone rang at 7:12 a.m. I didn't need to look. I knew it was him, my father. I picked up. "Adeline." His voice sounded distant, careful, like he had already decided what he was about to do. "I don't think we can make it." Just like that. No hesitation. No apology. Not really. "Your sister's event starts at noon. And with the drive." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I stood there, holding the phone, feeling something inside me go completely still. "You promised," I said. "I know." A pause, but not the kind that holds regret. The kind that just waits for you to accept it. "You'll have other moments," he added. Other moments. Like this one was replaceable. Like this day was just another entry on a calendar. "This is my only wedding day," I said. My voice didn't shake. "And I'm proud of that." He sighed. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I ended the call. Not because I didn't have more to say, but because, for the first time, I understood. He wasn't listening. Rachel didn't ask what happened. She just stepped closer, finished my makeup, and squeezed my shoulder gently. That was enough. By the time we arrived at the garden, the sun had already begun to settle into the afternoon light. It was beautiful, painfully beautiful. The kind of place you imagine your family filling with laughter. 42 chairs, lined up perfectly. White fabric, lavender, tied to each one. From a distance, it looked like a dream. Up close, 35 of them were empty. 7 people. That's who came. 7. Marcus stood at the end of the aisle, trying to stay strong. But I could see it in his eyes. He knew what this meant. Not just for me, but for us. Rachel was already there. 2 of Marcus's friends, 2 of mine, and Harold, standing quietly, off to the side. The man I barely thought twice about. Until that moment. The music started, soft, familiar, and suddenly, it was time. I stood at the beginning of the aisle, alone. No father beside me, no family behind me, just silence and 35 empty chairs, watching. For a second, I couldn't move. Not because I was weak, but because the weight of it finally landed. This is what it looks like when people choose not to show up. Not loudly, not dramatically, just absence. I took a breath, and I was about to walk forward, alone, when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, steady. I believe I'm overdressed for this, a voice said softly. I turned. Harold. But not the Harold I knew, not the man in the worn jacket, with coffee in his hand. This was different. A navy suit, perfectly tailored, a quiet kind of elegance. That didn't ask for attention, but commanded it anyway. He stepped closer, looked at me, not with pity, but with something stronger. Respect. Your father should be here, he said. A pause. But since he isn't, someone who values you should. And then he held out his arm. For a moment, I couldn't speak, because something inside me that had been holding together for years finally broke, not in pain, but in relief. I nodded, took his arm, and together we walked. The 7 people stood. Rachel was crying openly now. Marcus trying not to. And for the first time that day, I didn't feel alone. The ceremony was short, simple, real. We said our vows, hands shaking, voices unsteady, but honest. There were no grand gestures, no applause from a crowd, just 7 people who chose to be there. And somehow, that made it more meaningful than anything I had ever imagined. When it was over, we didn't rush. We stayed. We laughed. We ate simple food. We danced on the grass as the sun disappeared, and the air grew softer. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And that night, when everything finally quieted down, I checked my phone just once. Out of habit, out of hope, maybe. Nothing. No messages, no missed calls. No, I'm sorry. No, we're thinking of you. Nothing. As if the day had never happened. As if I had never mattered. I stared at the screen, longer than I should have. Then slowly, I set it face down, because something inside me had finally changed. I wasn't waiting anymore. And what I didn't know then was that somewhere, far outside that quiet little garden, everything was already beginning to shift in ways none of us could see yet. And when it did, the same people who left those chairs empty would be the ones desperate to fill them again. The first week after the wedding was quieter than I expected. Not peaceful, not healing, just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels unfinished, like something should have happened, but didn't. I kept checking my phone, out of habit more than hope. Nothing. No messages from my parents. No calls from my sister. No awkward apologies from extended family. Just silence. Complete, deliberate silence. As if ignoring me was easier than acknowledging what they had done. At some point, I stopped checking. Not because I stopped caring, but because I finally understood there was nothing coming. So I turned my attention to the only thing that had ever been honest. Our life. Marcus went back to painting, but something about his work had changed. It was deeper, sharper, more intentional. He started a new series. Large canvases, quiet spaces, empty chairs, rooms that felt abandoned, but not forgotten. He called it the 7th chair. I didn't ask him to explain. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what it meant. One afternoon, Harold came downstairs to see the new work. He stood in front of one painting, longer than usual, a garden scene, 42 chairs, only 7 filled. The rest, empty. He didn't say anything at first, just studied it. Then, quietly, he took out his phone, typed something, and put it away. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I should have, because everything changed 2 weeks later. Harold invited us upstairs, not casually, not in passing. An actual invitation, coffee on the table, 3 cups, and a box, old exhibition catalogs, gallery names I recognized, but couldn't quite place. Harold sat across from us, calm, composed, like he had been waiting for the right moment. I ran a gallery in New York for 22 years, he said. Just like that. No build-up, no drama. And suddenly, everything about him made sense. The way he looked at Marcus's work, the way he spoke about light, about composition, about things most people never noticed. I've represented artists your entire career is trying to become, he continued. He looked at Marcus, not kindly, not generously, honestly. And you, he said, are one of them. The room went still. Then he told us the rest. 6 months ago, before the engagement, before the wedding, he had sent Marcus's work to a private collector. A serious one. The kind of name that opens doors. The kind of name that changes everything. The first painting had already sold. $85,000. I turned to Marcus. He didn't look surprised. Just quiet, like he had been carrying this alone. I was going to tell you after the wedding, he said softly. I didn't want it to change anything. It didn't. It revealed everything. Within days, contracts arrived. A full commission, 12 paintings, nearly $500,000. A gallery in New York offering a solo exhibition. Real, verified, irreversible. And suddenly, everything my family believed about us was already wrong. But they didn't know that. Not yet. A week later, we were invited somewhere else. Not a gallery, not a meeting. A yacht. Monaco, 10 days. A gift from the collector. At first, I hesitated. It felt unreal, too far from the version of life I had always been told to accept. But then I thought about that garden, those empty chairs, that silence. And I realized I had spent my entire life making myself smaller so other people could feel comfortable. Not anymore. So I said yes. The yacht was beyond anything I had imagined. Endless water, soft light, rooms that felt like they belonged in another world. For the first time, I wasn't the invisible one. I wasn't the afterthought. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And on the last night, I did something I almost never do. I posted a photo. Just one. No explanation. No long caption. Just a sentence. Honeymoon with my husband. Grateful for the people who showed up. And then, I put my phone away. I went to sleep. Peacefully. When I woke up the next morning, everything had changed. My phone was vibrating endlessly. Notifications stacked on top of each other. So fast, I couldn't read them. Calls, messages, voicemails, hundreds of them. I sat up slowly, picked up the phone, and stared at the number. 417 messages. From the same people who couldn't send one. On my wedding day. My father. Dozens of missed calls. Whose yacht is that? Why didn't you tell us? Call me. My mother. Oh my God, sweetheart. Is that Monaco? We need to celebrate. Celebrate. Now she wanted to celebrate. My sister. 3 messages. Short, sharp. Wait. What is Marcus actually successful? We need to talk. We need to talk. After everything. And then the rest. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who had declined my wedding, now suddenly proud of me, claiming they always believed, as if belief could be rewritten after the fact. And at the very bottom, one message stood out. From my brother-in-law. Is Marcus available for commissions? I'd love to connect. I read that one twice, not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed everything. I didn't respond. Not to him, not to any of them. Marcus found me later, sitting quietly, phone face down. He didn't ask. He already knew. I'm not going to ignore them forever, I said. But I'm not going to pretend this is okay. That afternoon, I opened the family group chat for the first time since the wedding, and I typed one message, slowly, carefully, not emotional, not angry, just clear, because this time they were the ones waiting. I stared at the screen for a long time before I sent that message, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally understood. This wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about choosing who I was going to be. So I kept it simple. Thank you for your messages. Marcus and I are doing well. A pause. For those asking, Marcus signed a major art contract 6 weeks ago. I could almost feel them reading that line, replaying the timeline, understanding just how wrong they had been. The trip was a gift. We're grateful. Another pause. And then, the part that mattered. I won't pretend your absence on my wedding day didn't hurt. It did. I let that sit there. No anger, no accusation, just truth. My father promised to walk me down the aisle and chose not to. My mother chose another event over her daughter's wedding. My sister scheduled that event, knowing exactly what it would do. I read it once, twice, then added the final line. I'm not angry, but I need space. When I'm ready, I'll reach out. And I sent it. For 4 hours, no one replied. I imagined they were sitting together somewhere, reading it out loud, trying to figure out how to respond, without admitting what they had done. That night, my father called. I didn't answer, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because, for once, he needed to feel what it was like to wait. The next few weeks changed everything. Not loudly, not dramatically, but undeniably. Marcus's exhibition opened in New York. The gallery was full. Collectors, critics, people who understood the value of what he had created. At the center of the room was the painting, the one that captured it all. A garden, soft afternoon light, 42 chairs, 7 filled, 35 empty. The title, June 14th. I stood there, watching strangers look at it. Some of them stepped closer. Some of them didn't speak at all. And a few actually cried, because they understood, not the details, but the feeling, the absence, the quiet kind of pain. That doesn't need explanation. The painting sold before the night ended, $120,000. And suddenly, the story wasn't just ours anymore. It was public, documented, impossible to ignore. My father saw it in an article. Someone sent it to him. I never found out who, but I can imagine him sitting there, reading it slowly, seeing those empty chairs, and realizing he had been one of them. My mother called soon after. Her voice was different this time. Not polished, not rehearsed. Your father hasn't said much, she admitted. He just sits there. I didn't comfort her, not because I didn't care, but because this wasn't something I could fix. A few days later, my sister called. For the first time since before the wedding, her voice was softer than usual. Careful. I miss you, she said. And for a moment, I almost believed her, until the real reason surfaced. Brett's business is struggling, she added. There's a lot going on. There it was. Not apology, not accountability, just need. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just told the truth. You planned your event on my wedding day, I said. You made people choose. Silence. Then, I was pregnant, she said quickly. I was stressed. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. And you were calculating, I replied. Not cruel, not emotional, just accurate. Another silence. Longer this time. I love you, she said finally. I closed my eyes, took a breath. I love you too, I said. But I won't let love be used to control me anymore. She hung up. And this time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt clear, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn my place. Months passed, and then karma did what it always does. Quietly, completely. My brother-in-law's company filed for bankruptcy. Projects failed. Money disappeared. The life my family had built around his success collapsed. My parents lost financial support. My mother's credit cards were cut off. The house suddenly became a burden. And one afternoon, My father showed up at my door. No call, no warning, just standing there. Older than I remembered. Not because of time, but because of regret. I didn't come to ask for anything he said. I believed him. I came to say I'm sorry. Not quickly, not vaguely, carefully, like he had practiced it. Over and over again. I sat at a party while my daughter got married. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw it. Not pride, not distance, just truth. I'll carry that for the rest of my life. I didn't rush to forgive him. I didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. But I stepped aside. Come in, I said. Marcus just made coffee. That was enough. Not a full bridge, but the beginning of one. Because forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a process. And some days, you're still deciding if it's worth building. Now, I live in a house we paid for ourselves. Not large, not perfect, but ours. Marcus paints downstairs. I work by the window. The garden is growing, slowly, steadily. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, I think about that day. 42 chairs, 7 people, 417 messages. And I realize none of those numbers matter. What matters is this. I stopped counting the people who didn't show up and started building a life with the ones who did. Because in the end, self-respect is the quietest form of revenge. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to fight. You just have to stop accepting less than you deserve. And the people who once ignored you will eventually realize they were the ones who lost everything. Now, I want to ask you something. If you were me, would you have answered those 417 messages? Or would you have left them exactly where they left you? If you step back from this story and look at it not as a daughter, but as an observer, you begin to see something deeper. This was never just about a wedding. It was about patterns, the quiet ones that form over years. When one child is prioritized and another is taught to accept less. Families don't break in a single moment. They erode slowly through small choices. Who gets celebrated? Who gets overlooked? Who is expected to understand? And who is never asked to? And what happened to Adeline is something more common than we like to admit. But here's the part most people miss. Her story didn't change when her husband became successful. It changed the moment she stopped asking for permission to be valued. That's where the real shift happened. Not in the money, not in the recognition, but in her decision to no longer chase love that was given conditionally. Because self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg. It simply steps back and lets people reveal who they are without interference. Now, if this story made you pause, if it reminded you of something you felt but never said out loud, take a moment to reflect on that. And if you believe more people need to hear stories like this, stories that don't just entertain, but help us understand ourselves a little better, consider giving this video a like. And if you'd like more stories that stay with you long after they end, you can subscribe to the channel, not for the numbers, but for the next story that might find you exactly when you need it. Because sometimes healing doesn't start with answers. It starts with finally seeing the truth.